Hello there. And thank you for joining this session on chatbots using Azure AI. I hope you're having a good time at the conference. And thank you for making time to join this session. Let's also thank our sponsors who've made it possible to have such a conference, especially in a virtual environment. So thank you, all of you. And a little introduction about myself. My name is Liji Thomas. I'm a manager with modern application development at Velorum Reply. We are a US-based MNC. We're a Microsoft partner with businesses in digital transformation for our customers. And I come from a beautiful town in southern India, which is called Kochi. And you can find me online connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter, or I occasionally blog at MySpace as well. So some of the key takeaways from this session would be the what, why, and how of conversational AI. At a very high level, I'm hoping you would go away with an understanding of what conversational AI is, why we need to be excited about this area, and how to go about conversational AI and how to start building conversational agents. So the agenda of the day would cover a background of conversational AI and maybe a little bit about AI itself before we go into the landscape and understand what platforms are, and specifically the offerings from the Microsoft ecosystem in this regard. Azure Bot Service and Azure Cognitive Services, deep dive into them with demos before we open it up for Q&A. Okay, so let's get started. Especially in the wake of the pandemic in the last year or so, there's been an amazing amount of stress and pressure on enterprises and organizations with regards to customer service. So previously, conversational AI used to be considered as a key differentiator for organizations that wanted to heighten their competitiveness in the marketplace, so to speak. But these days, it's considered as an absolute necessity of the businesses themselves. When a lot of enterprises had to close down due to lockdown restrictions, and the employees could not turn up at offices, and there's a lot of stress from the customer experiences. There's been a key driver behind that digital transformation journey that the benefits of conversational AI could bring to the table. And we're here to better understand what those possibilities are and what those capabilities are as we move to the future. So a step back to just look at the story thus far. Especially in our industry, we know that for the last couple of decades, there's been a lot of transitions and transformations that have been taking place. We've moved from the PC era to the internet era, the mobile era, and now we have the AI era, or the Industry 4.0, as they call it. Now, deep zoom into that last block that we saw there, the AI era. It's interchangeably and synonymously used with a lot of other terms that are doing rounds, like machine learning and deep learning and so on and so forth. Fundamentally, these are different in notion. So artificial intelligence, or AI, refers to a superset of these capabilities, any technique that allows computers to mimic or to augment, now they call, the human behavior. If you come from a Microsoft background, you know Clippy, which was an office assistant in Microsoft Word. It didn't have a very successful career. Perhaps it was an idea that was far ahead of its time. But starting from Clippy to Deep Blue's chess computers, which defeated chess grandmasters, the primitive forms of AI did exist, but a lot of them had rule sets that were built into or that were programmed by the developers. And enter machine learning, that's a fundamentally different paradigm, wherein you don't hardcode the rule sets, you allow the machines to learn, or you rather teach them. And that's based on the amount of data that you can feed into these systems. And there's not just one single way to go about machine learning. There are a lot of algorithms, of which deep learning or neural networks is one of the prominent ones that we've been hearing thus far. So we wouldn't go into the nuances of each of this, but just to say that these are, though interchangeably used, it's actually different terms altogether. But I would invite your attention to the timeline below. Interestingly, it looks like artificial intelligence or AI has been doing the rounds for a couple of decades now, way back to the 1950s and 60s. So it's quite interesting that it's gaining momentum only recently. So why is it that we are hearing about this only in the last couple of years? To answer that question, we probably need to answer a bigger question as to how is AI programming different, or if it is different from a traditional structured programming. So there are a lot of ways you can answer that question. And the simplest way to actually put it is that we would need to teach machines and not instruct machines. Imagine teaching another human being. It's probably the same paradigm itself. Now, if I have to teach my child, my preschooler, my daughter, on what a cat is, I just have to show her maybe one cat or two cats, maybe a couple of images. And in a few days, she would be able to recognize what a cat is and maybe also what a cat is not. And so I don't have to show her every single cat on the planet, so to speak. So using that same analogy, let's see what it takes to teach machines. One, we need data, and we need loads of data. And this kind of data did not exist during those times in the 1950s and the 60s. Likewise, we wanted computing power or infrastructure to be able to use all of that data or to process it. And most of all, we wanted algorithms and powerful structured. We wanted statistical models to be able to make use of that data and run on those computing power. Now, all three of this not available during those times. And so that gives you a clue as to why then the breakthroughs that we have today. So the breakthroughs enabling AI in the last couple of years can be attributed to a couple of factors. One, big data, and two, cloud computing, and most of all, powerful algorithms that can leverage the capability around big data and cloud computing. And big data is not just with reference to the amount of availability of the data, it's also referring to the capability to store and to harness this data in terms of the data warehouses and the structures that we have today. So forwarding that conversation to the evolution of chatbots, which is almost following a similar trajectory. So in the PC era, we would see a lot of people use desktop applications. Come the internet era, that went to websites. And the mobile era, people had downloaded applications from on their smartphones from the store applications. And as the computing power got larger and larger and the device sizes got smaller and smaller, so did the preferences of the people as well, and they did not want to spend a lot of time navigating their new websites and applications, finding their way around, and they did not want to learn the language of each and every application, which caused them app fatigue. They're changing the game in terms of having the machine now get accustomed to the human's language and the human's ways of interaction. So previously, the human needed to learn the machine's language, and the human needed to understand how to go about interacting with an application or an app or a website to be able to gain value or benefit out of that. Enter chatbots or conversational agents. Now we are flipping the table, so to speak, and trying to let the machines learn and understand our language and interact with us in a manner that we would just interact with our fellow human beings. So before we go any further, let's ask ourselves, what exactly is a chatbot? Because again, there's a lot of names doing the rounds with regards to virtual assistants and conversational agents, etc. Under the hoods, a chatbot is nothing but another computer program. So it simulates human conversations, and the interface that it uses, you can use text, you can use voice commands, or you can use a combination of both. And it does not have to be a standalone app like Siri or Alexa. You can also have it incorporated with, or integrated with any of your existing applications, like if you want to put a chatbot on a website today. So what can a bot do or what's inside a bot depends completely on your specific business case. You can use a chatbot for anything as simple as doing calculations to even setting an alarm or telling you the weather to even making a dentist appointment or a dinner reservation. So it can do very simple and menial automated tasks to very complicated tasks. That depends on your use case. But most importantly, why chatbots? One, as we already discussed, it feels more like dealing with another human being because conversations, if you kind of think about it, is the most natural and intuitive way of communication between two humans. And it feels a lot less like you're using a computer program or an application or a website. It is available 24/7. It will not take a day off or it will not fall sick. So that's another thing about chatbots. And if you have very tight SLAs and very high expectations on customer experiences, it provides immediate response. It reduces the wait line, the queues there. The initial investment with building up a chatbot is huge, but it ultimately the return of investment and the cost is definitely less. It helps you reach new channels in terms of if you have a lot of people, a lot of your audience on Facebook, for example, you can deploy a chatbot there to tap into that audience. And overall, of course, it increases the engagement because the user experience is very good when you use an agent. So here's a history of the chatbots. As you can see, there's been a lot of traction around 1966, 72, 81. Alexa and Siri were probably not the first chatbots, so to speak. So we've had Eliza, we've had Jabberwocky, a lot of chatbots that have existed even in the past. And even looking forward into the future, this looks quite promising based on the statistics that we see, one of which says that by 2025, 95% of the customer transactions will be made using bots, either telephone or online. And a lot of firms have actually jumped onto this bandwagon and they've started incorporating chatbots as part of their businesses, major brands, and these are not restricted to small scale or large scale on premises or cloud. Any industry, retail, healthcare, hospitality, finance, they've been accepting of this technology. And in fact, even very innovative examples of which a few I have shared here. One is Rose Intelligence. Rose is an AI lawyer chatbot, and it's interesting what it does. It crawls through all this data on all the data that a lawyer would probably need to prepare his case or her case, and it presents the data to the lawyer and who can do his job best, which is to present it to the client. Tara is an AI recruiter bot, and what Tara does is it helps in talent acquisition. It helps to match a job profile of a candidate with the right description of the job, maybe even look through data points like GitHub activities of a software engineer, etc., and match it to the correct company. Wobot is a very interesting bot. It is based on the principles of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. So this talk therapy bot is used to help chat with patients going through clinical depression, and that's a very interesting use case. So here's debunking a few chatbot myths as we close down the introduction section here. Chatbots are a new technology. Now we know that that's not true. So this technology has been prevalent. It's been there for a long time, but it's not new. It's just developing all this while. And it can only support customer service. Not entirely true. Chatbots have got a variety of different use cases, some of which we saw were very innovative. All bots use AI, not necessarily. Some bots are very hard-coded and very rule-based, and they can only do what they're pre-programmed to do. And some bots are very intelligent. Chatbots versus humans. So chatbots are not necessarily going to completely displace humans. Even in a customer scenario, maybe the first 40% of those user transactions or interactions can be handled by a bot, wherein you free up the human to do much more creative tasks and much more human-like interactions. And the last point being chatbots are difficult to build. I'll leave you with that. You can make that decision through for the rest of the section. We're going to see how difficult or how easy it is to actually build a chatbot from scratch. So here's going into the next section of the session, which is look at the technical aspects of the session. So I could not have put this any better than Satya himself, who has prophetically said this a few years ago at Build. Human language is the new UI layer and bots are like the new applications. And how true, because Microsoft ever since has invested a lot inside their Azure AI platform. And specifically, we have services around bot and bot cases. And we'll look at that. So if you'd like to connect the dots from where we saw the history of AI and conversational AI, we'd see that some of the breakthroughs that were enabling this was one was computing power. So that's where infrastructure comes. So we have the FPGA, we have the GPU today in terms of advanced computing power. We have powerful algorithms and we have pre-built AI. If you want to just start consuming AI services and models, you can also build custom AI, and we have the tools for that. And over and above for the developer community, all the SDKs and frameworks, even connected with open source frameworks that are available there. So for the sake of this session, we would probably be looking at just two of the AI services, bot service and cognitive service, but to just show you where it fits inside the entire AI spectrum, now you have an idea. So for those of you who come from a developer background, you would be familiar with the SDLC, which is the software development lifecycle. For bot developers, we use a rather synonymous name. It's called the Bot Development Lifecycle, or the BDLC as they call it. It's not very different from an SDLC. We go through similar phases wherein first we plan, we have to sit with our designers or with the analysts, and you kind of plan out what you need to have as part of your bot. That includes best practices, patterns, etc. Next up, you actually build the bot. And that's where you use your SDKs, your tools or frameworks, or whatever the platform provides you, and you build the bot. Once you build the bot, you have to test it. You have to check if the bot is behaving as you expect it to. And if you're happy with what you see, you publish it. So publishing a bot refers to making an endpoint of the bot, or publishing the address of the bot, or making it available at a point where your users can connect to the bot or interact with your bot. So that's publishing. Because after publishing comes the connect part. So that's where you deploy the bot to the various channels. So you're connected to the various channels. Channels is a terminology that we use to refer to the various mediums where you put your bot. For example, it could refer to Facebook, Slack, Twitter, even Teams. And finally, we evaluate the bot. And this is the fun part, wherein you are very proud of what you've created and you put it out there for the users. But once the users start interacting with the bot is when you kind of identify that, okay, so there's so much more that I need to learn, or my bot needs to learn. And you gather all that data and you take it back to your drawing board, go back to build, maybe additionally train your bot, maybe add in more features, and that cycle goes on and on and on. So that's an iterative cycle that you see here. Now, any platform, any powerful bot platform should be able to give you tools to perform these steps: plan, build, test, publish, connect, and evaluate. And this would definitely help a developer to come up to speed in building chatbot solutions. So there are a lot of solutions, so a lot of platforms out there that will be helpful in this regard. We're going to look at Microsoft's offering, or Azure Bot Service, which is specifically purpose-built for bot development. So if any developer wants to get started with building bots, Azure Bot Service is the go-to service from Microsoft. It uses an open source SDK, and it provides you the tools to do all those phases that we just saw in the BDLC cycle. And out of the box, one of the most beautiful features of Azure Bot Service is that you have a single source code that Once built, you will be able to connect to these multiple channels that you see on screen. So you need not rewrite your code to connect them to Teams or Cake or Skype or to Telegram or Twitter. So you can reuse the same source code, and with very minimal configurations, you can connect that same bot to behave the same way on multiple channels. And we see how. So here's a quick demo on Azure Bot Service, and I'm going to just start sharing flip my screen to my portal, and hopefully you can see that. So I'm in portal.azure.com. If I can just increase my screen width a little. So if you have an Azure subscription, you can get started today, or you can even sign up for a free Azure subscription to try what we're doing right now. So I would go to create a resource and just search for bot. And if you search for bot, you get a number of options. I would choose the web app bot, which is fairly simple to create. If I click create, I have a number of parameters to fill. I would just need to give my bot handle and my subscription, my Azure subscription. Select your resource group, your location, your pricing tier, and this would be auto-filled for you, and just a couple of columns, and just click create. So this could take a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes. So I've created a bot for us, and let's say this is the I'm creating a bot for our conference, NetCore Conf bot. So here's my created resource, right? So I'm in my overview pane, and before I do anything at all, let me show you how this bot behaves. So I have an option to test the bot within the Azure portal. So I have not changed anything. I have not touched my bot. This is fresh off the oven. So I'm going to just say hi, and we see how the bot responds. So it's echoing hi. So consider this the bot version of our Hello World application. This is what we call an echo bot. So it doesn't do much. It just echoes whatever you say. So and not super helpful. So what you would do is you would go to the here you have it. In the overview pane, you have the option to download the bot source code. And when you download the bot source code, again, that's going to take a few minutes. And I can show you the downloaded bot source code, which I've kept for you. So when you download the bot source code, what you essentially get to see is a .NET Core web application. Now this is, again, I've not touched the code at all. I'm just going to run this and going to see, let's see what it builds out of the box. So this is a typical .NET Core application, and it's running on my local host now. So as you can see from this screen here, it says that your bot is ready. You can even test your bot inside a tool that's called Emulator, because your bot is now available at this particular endpoint. And if you see here on the right pane, it also shows you a very interesting visual of the same steps that we discussed in the slide. So it's asking that you plan. Obviously, you have design guidelines, recommendations for Microsoft to be able to do that. You have the capability to build. As we saw, we can build in two ways. You can build right from your Azure Bot Service. You can even build it in another way. You can start from Visual Studio or the IDE of your choice. You can get bot templates to download. So if you do file new project, you can choose a bot template and you can start from there. And if you go down that route, if you're happy with the development and of yourself or your team, and then you choose to publish it to Azure or any other cloud for that matter, you can use a publish profile and you can deploy it. So there are two ways in which you can proceed. We just went through the Azure Bot Service route. So we have the source code, it's running, and imagine we can go back and we can do whatever we want with the source code and add in logic that will cater to our specific business need. And we don't always have to publish it back into Azure to be able to test that. So which is why we have a tool from Microsoft called Emulator, which is the bot framework emulator. Now, let's say my bot is actually running, and let's connect it to the emulator. So this is my emulator, my bot framework emulator. I would just, click open bot. I would connect it to my local URI. So that's where my bot is running right now. I can furnish my app ID and my password. That's from my Azure subscription. And just how the same way that we interacted with the bot within the Azure portal, I can interact with the bot even within the emulator here. So this is taking a while, but there you go. So you have the EcoBot. So as I said, not super helpful, I know, but you can go back and you can change this, add additional logic within this code, and it's just a .NET Core application, and you see controllers, etc., and you can add that and change it to your preference. And when you're happy with that, you can publish it back into the Azure portal. So this is the Azure Bot Service, or the web app bot that provides you the ability to build your bots. The most interesting part, however, is once you've published it, you've tested, and it's published and it's available inside Azure. The fourth part that we saw was to connect the bots. And you'll find this interesting when you go to the channels pane here. So there, out of the box, you have so many channels that are available from Microsoft. So let me show you a few of them. So as you saw on the top, you have the ability to connect it to web chat. I've connected it to Alexa as well, which is one of the newest channels that was released. You can connect it to Facebook, GroupMe, Skype, Slack, Telegram, Twilio, and it's quite interesting. And they keep increasing the number of channels that they can connect to here. So I've connected that to Alexa, and if you're interested to see how we did that, you can click edit. And we see that. So this is, considering my EcoBot is ready to be shown to the world, and I'm happy with what we've created. So the only configuration that the portal is expecting here is a skill ID, which is an Alexa skill ID. And this would take a while, but let me for the sake of time, I've already created this, so I'd be happy to show you around how we did this or how we arrived at the skill ID. So I'm moving on to my Alexa developer console. So if I'm going to look at the URL, so that's developer.amazon.com. And if you do not have an account, you can create an account today, and you can get started with the developer console. And if you're not familiar with the Alexa skill model, so when you create a new skill, this is what you get. And just two parameters that we need to change in this entire console here. One of this is under the interaction model. By the way, we have detailed documentation for all of this on the Microsoft site, the docs.microsoft.com, and you can simply follow the instructions there to do what we're discussing right now itself. But I'm just quickly showing you what was done. So under the interaction model, we have a JSON editor. And the only thing I did here is there was a JSON editor wherein I went and said that this is how I want my bot to be invoked. Typically, when you talk to Alexa, you would tell her what the name of your bot is. So the name of my bot is EcoBot, and I would just, I have the capability to put in a couple of phrases, example phrases. So that's one. And then also another area I would touch is the endpoint. Now, this is most important because this is where I specify where the bot is hosted. So if you remember, I can just go back a second. Alexa service endpoint URI is what I get from my Azure portal. I would copy that and I would paste that here. So this is where this goes. And that's it. I would change this to this certificate, this line as well, and I would save my endpoints, and that's it. I would just build the model. And then if I go back to my skills, I will get the skill ID. But before that, let's see if this thing works. I can even test it within the Alexa portal, because the Alexa portal is also capable of testing bots. Alexa, ask EcoBot hi. Let's see if that returns anything. So Echo, hi. Oops, I'm not sure if you heard that, but Echo said hi. So yeah, so you can imagine this to for your specific user scenario or your business case, wherein you can use this for, say, we have a conference bot, and you can say, Alexa, ask the conference bot, what date is this conference happening? What are the sessions? Or what is the agenda? Or do we have a session on chatbots, etc.? And so you can have Alexa answer all those questions, and if the logic has been built into your application. And most interestingly, what you need to do is go back to your skills pane, and this is the skill that I created, my CamBot skill. I would just copy the skill ID from here. So when I copy the skill ID, I get the skill ID, and I would just go back into my portal and paste the skill ID there. And voila, it's done. So that's all there is to it, pretty much. Just a couple of configuration parameters, just have to translate here and there, and we're done with configuring Microsoft Chatbot for even Alexa. Likewise, you can do that for other channels as well, for Facebook and for Telegram, etc. I encourage you to try that out. Okay, so going back to our slides and moving on. So as we said, the EcoBot was not super intelligent, so to speak. You can put in all the logic into your .NET Core app as well. But the most the most touching part of any chatbot is actually its capabilities to behave like a human, or adding human-like capabilities to a chatbot. And we know that what makes us humans, the superhumans that we are, is our abilities around language, around vision, around speech, our abilities to make decision and search. And Microsoft, having recognized that, have been investing a ton into these areas, and for decades actually now, in terms of the Microsoft AI research centers across the globe. And they have been able to even achieve human parity around certain areas like machine translation or speech recognition, or even as of late in 2020, October, they attained image captioning human parity, which means that a machine can now caption an image as good as a human can. So that's interesting. Also, Microsoft has been internally testing out these APIs or this research capabilities on their own application. So when we use a PowerPoint or an Excel or a Bing, and all the AI capabilities and intelligent capabilities that we see are actually powered by these services. Now, most interestingly, and what's most exciting for all of us is they have released these capabilities or these services or these AI APIs for us, the developer community, to use, so that we can now build applications or chatbots that will behave like humans. That is probably the easiest, the fastest, and the quickest way to integrate AI into your application system. So if you don't have machine learning expertise, if you don't have data science skills as a developer, you can still be an AI developer and build intelligent applications if you can consume cognitive services. And they're very simple APIs to just get you started on this. So as we discussed, Azure Cognitive Services is an offering from Microsoft, and they have built these around these four major areas. Search used to be one of them, so actually moved Bing Search out of this. So today we have vision, speech, language, and decision. And around these four categories, they have a load of APIs for each of it. And most of these can be used on, depending on your use case, you can use these in your specific application. And it doesn't necessarily have to be chatbots, but because we're building bots today, let's talk about it in bot perspective. So imagine we're building an IT support bot, and the user comes around, a user would want to ask my bot, so how do I set up VPN on my laptop? I don't know how many times I must have asked that in my in a remote scenario, right? And I'd love the bot to be able to tell me, so here are the instructions to set up VPN. Sounds straightforward. So what's the problem? The challenge is 10 different people can ask the same question in 10 different ways. And I'd love to tell my bot that irrespective of however these questions get asked, the answer should be one and the same. So I would not just want to build a repository of questions and answers, but also be able to configure alternate questions for my primary questions. There is a cognitive service that helps me in that regard, which is qnamaker.ai. And try it out today. You can go to the portal called qnamaker.ai and you can add in questions and answers and even add alternate questions, add metadata tags. You can, the entire development lifecycle is supported within that. So you don't have to have a structured DB or an Azure SQL DB to get started. Even to a certain extent, non-technical people can use this. You can save and train and publish and test and everything within the qnamaker.ai portal itself. Now let's complicate things a little further. So imagine I'm building an email bot. Again, I'd love to tell my bot that, just send this particular message. So I can say, respond, thank you. I can say reply by email, thank you. Email back, thank you. Reply with thank you. I can say that in 10 different ways. Now, irrespective of however they say it, I wanted the intention here is to send an email. One of the things from a technical aspect that I would say is that all these different variations from the user is what they call utterances. And irrespective of those utterances, the intent, as we saw, is to send mail. If we can take out the entity here, and I'll tell you why, because tomorrow I can say the same thing. I can use the same email bot to send an entirely different email message. So it does not have to be the same email message. So I would need to configure my bot to be able to send any email message. So there's an additional level of sophistication there, which is probably just abstracting that email message itself out. Now, this may not be supported by Q&A Maker, but there's an other service called Luis, LUIS.ai, which has a certain degree of natural language understanding, and it helps to understand or to map what the intent of the user is. So if I tell it, if I greet it in any way, like, hey, hi, hello, however I wish to, and then you do that the same, Luis would be able to figure out what the intention of the user is, which is specifically a greeting. Of course, you need to train it to be able to do of all those sorts, but that's how Luis helps. So here's to building intelligent conversation. So off the bat, we might think this is pretty simple. A user asks a question and the bot should know what to respond. But now when we go under the hood, we would know what services are actually powering these capabilities. So when the user asks a question, Luis understands the intent of the user. Q&A Maker holds the answers. It is the repository, and therefore it will know what exactly to respond to the user. As I said, there's a ton of cognitive services that you can use based on your specific use case. Excuse me. We also have a very sophisticated virtual assistant bot framework from Azure, which helps connect most of these cognitive services with the knowledge sources, and you can tie that into multiple channels and even multiple devices. And it's built on the paradigm of skills, wherein every skill would be another bot, small bot per se, and you can plug and play these components of these skills and built really powerful bots. And a classic example of that is how La Liga, in collaboration with Microsoft, built their chatbot, which is today available in Google Assistant. Go check it out if you're a La Liga fan. So it shows you the player stats, the match statistics, etc., and answers all those questions. So you'd be excited to know that that's actually powered by Azure Bot Service and a lot of cognitive services that they've used behind the screens to build the La Liga virtual assistant for Google. So like La Liga, there's a lot of other customers as well who's been using the bot service and Azure Cognitive Services, and there's a lot of customer momentum in this, and this is way beyond the prototype and the POC phases, which we used to think about years back, and this is actual enterprise grade the production quality apps today. So here we come full circle.
now with seeing how BDLC or Bot Development Lifecycle is now supported in Azure. We were looking for a platform that would help us developers to actually plan, build, test, publish, connect, and evaluate our app. And it looks like Azure Bot Service is the perfect platform for that. So it's, as we discussed, it's purpose built for bot development. For planning, it provides the bot framework. It provides a lot of out of the box templates. It also provides the best practices, design guidelines, etc. For your teams. It helps you to build this again using bot framework and cognitive services if you'd like. You can test it both within the portal, and also you can download a tool like Bot Emulator, which helps you connect to your bot and helps your team to build it offline and on your local machines. And if you're happy with that, you can publish it to Azure and use the platform as a service, the infrastructure that it provides. And from Azure Bot Service, you can also connect it to the various channels, as we saw, to Teams or to Alexa. And one thing we probably did not demo as part of this, but you can imagine, is that you can connect it also to turn on app insights, and application insights would be able to collect the telemetry of your chatbot usage, your statistics, etc. You can store that, and from app insights, you can power that to a data lake if you want historic data, or use that to directly Power BI reports, and you can see how the bot is behaving, what questions it answered, what it did not answer. Use that to retrain your bot, and it's a great story from there. So before we wrap up, we'll probably take one moment and one slide to talk about the responsibility that we have in building such powerful applications and in using such powerful technologies. Especially as AI developers, it is our responsibility to build applications that are fair, reliable, safe, secure, inclusive, and accountable. So all the principles of responsible AI are applicable in creating conversational agents as well, because today we are making every single line of code that we write is not just logic. Those are decisions that we make, not just for ourselves, but for our families and for our extended communities. And the onus on us to be responsible about that is just risen. So I hope this gives you a very high level overview on the what, the why, and the how of conversational AI. And hopefully it's got you excited enough to go get started today. And again, a huge thank you to all our sponsors who've made this conference and the session possible in a virtual environment. And thank you. And I hope you stay tuned for the rest of the conference, and feel free to give me a connect on LinkedIn or on Twitter or my blog post. I'm happy to talk to you about building delightful and powerful conversational experiences. Thank you.